Hey, math students. I've got an 11-year-old student, Kendra, and her mom who sent me a message with the coolest question. They were confused about the distributive property. So I'll just remind you guys, the distributive property is the one that says we can pass out multiplication across every term in the parentheses. Okay, so for example, 6 times the quantity of x plus 2, we could pass that multiplication out. 6 times x would be 6x. And 6 times positive 2, or adding 2 6 times, would be 12. And so that's the distributive property. We teach it all the time in math, and it's used in lots of different ways, from the multiplication algorithm up until high algebra. But Kendra is wondering, why doesn't the number diminish? Why doesn't it go down as we multiply? She says, well, in the real world, when we distribute things, we have less and less of them. So she's imagining perhaps a teacher at the front of the class who's distributing papers. Each time they distribute a paper to a student, there's less and less in their hands. And Kendra's right, that's true. That's true of distribution. But what she's not realizing is that that's not what the numbers represent here. So let's take a look here. We've got to remember that this is the distributive property of multiplication. Multiplication. Now, what is multiplication? Multiplication is basically telling us the number of times that an event occurred. An event could happen again and again and again. So let's give a great example of the distributive property. For example, like if I was distributing the number 5, this doesn't mean that I have 5 total things going on. This means that I am giving out or distributing the number 5 many, many times, like passing out 5 worksheets to each one of my students. Now let's look at a simple example that Kendra might see in her homework. So let's imagine, Kendra, that I teach in 3 different ways, okay, which I do. Okay, I teach at a college. Colleges tend to have really big classes. So let's imagine that I taught this math concept of distribution to my college students, and I wanted to give each one of them 5 worksheets. So this is the number of worksheets per person. Now, I, of course, would pass that out to all the students in my college class. Maybe there's 100 students in my college class, okay? Big old class. But then maybe I also teach high school. I used to teach high school, right? Those classes would be smaller. I could give those same 5 worksheets to all 30 students in my high school class. But that's not the only way I teach, right? I was a homeschool mom. So let's imagine that I gave those same 5 worksheets to each of my 6 daughters. I've now passed out 5 worksheets to first 100 students. That would have been 500 worksheets. And then I passed it out to 30 students. 5 worksheets times 30 students is 150. And then I passed it out to my 6 students. 5 worksheets times 6 will be another 30 worksheets. And I could add those all together, and I would find I'd passed out 680 total worksheets, and probably all my students are falling asleep. They're so super bored. Okay, and so of course that would work if I followed the order of operations dealing with the grouping too, because that's what the distributive property says, that I'm going to get the same answer either way. So imagine I added up all the students first. I have 100 students and 30 students and 6 students for a total of 136 students. And if I was giving 136 students 5 worksheets each, 136 times 5 gives me 680. So whether I pass them out one class at a time or I put all my students together and then pass out the worksheets, I still get a total of 680. So where was your error in logic, Kendra? It was that you were thinking I was starting with the total, and so it'd be getting less and less. But the distributive property allows us to pass out the same number again and again and again to find a total, Okay, great. I hope that clears things up for you. That is why that number 5 doesn't diminish as we pass it out. We're giving the same amount to everyone. All right, if you have any questions about this or any other math topic, feel free to drop it in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it.